The moment Jack Mitchell stepped onto the gleaming marble floor of the Bellamy estate, he knew he didn't belong. His rented tuxedo felt suddenly cheap, his borrowed shoes pinched his toes, and the invitation card in his pocket seemed like it must be some kind of mistake. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened next, when billionaire heiress Eliza Bellamy locked eyes with him from across the room, stopped her own wedding procession, and declared in front of 500 stunned guests that she was marrying the wrong man. If you're wondering how a struggling single father ended up becoming the groom at one of the most expensive weddings in Manhattan history, you'll want to stay until the very end of this incredible story. Like and subscribe to catch more unbelievable true stories that will restore your faith in destiny and second chances. Jack Mitchell stared at the invitation for the 5th time that morning, running his callous thumb over the embossed gold lettering. The heavy cream cardstock felt out of place in his small apartment kitchen, where his 7-year-old daughter Emma was happily munching cereal at their scratched wooden table. Ms. Eliza Bellamy and Mr. Richard Harrington III request the honor of your presence. Jack shook his head in disbelief. He hadn't seen Eliza in nearly 8 years, not since that summer they'd both worked at Camp Pinewood before senior year of college. Before life had taken them in drastically different directions. Before Emma. Before Sarah's death. "Daddy, are you going to the princess party?" Emma asked, milk dribbling down her chin. Jack smiled, reaching over to wipe her face with a napkin. "It's not exactly a princess party, sweetie. It's a wedding for someone I used to know a long time ago. Can I come too? I have my sparkly dress from Christmas." Jack's heart sank. The invitation clearly stated Mr. Jack Mitchell and guest, but bringing a 7-year-old to the wedding of New York's most eligible socialite and her hedge fund manager fiancé seemed inappropriate. Besides, he couldn't afford a babysitter on such short notice. "I don't think I'm going, Em. Mrs. Rodriguez next door invited you for a movie night, remember?" Emma's face fell. "But you never go anywhere fun. Mommy would want you to." The mention of Sarah always hit him like a physical blow. 3 years since the car accident, and the pain still felt fresh some days. He'd thrown himself into being both mother and father to Emma, working double shifts at the construction company, and somehow keeping their little family afloat. But social events? Those had fallen completely by the wayside. "I'll think about it," he said, knowing full well he'd already decided to decline. Later that evening, after tucking Emma into bed, Jack found himself staring at the invitation again. His phone buzzed with a text from his sister Kate. "Did you RSVP to that fancy wedding yet? You're going." Jack sighed and typed back, "Not my scene. Don't even know why I was invited." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Because Eliza Bellamy never forgot you, dummy. Everyone knew she was crazy about you that summer. Go. Live a little. I'll watch Emma." Jack's mind drifted back to that summer, the campfires, the late-night talks, the way Eliza's eyes crinkled when she laughed. They'd been from different worlds even then. She was there fulfilling a community service requirement for her Ivy League application, he was working to pay for his state college tuition. When summer ended, they'd promised to stay in touch, but life had other plans. He'd followed Sarah to Chicago, married young, had Emma, and then lost everything when Sarah's car hit a patch of black ice one February night. Meanwhile, Eliza had gone on to inherit her family's real estate empire, becoming one of the youngest female billionaires in the country. The invitation was probably just a courtesy, Jack reasoned. She was likely inviting all her former camp counselors for some nostalgic touch to her perfect society wedding. Still, Kate's offer to watch Emma removed his main excuse. With a deep breath, Jack picked up his phone and sent his RSVP. The Bellamy estate sprawled across 30 acres of prime Manhattan-adjacent real estate, a historic mansion that had been in Eliza's family for generations. As Jack's taxi approached the wrought iron gates, he felt increasingly out of place. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway, and guests in designer attire streamed toward the entrance. "You sure this is where you're headed, buddy?" the taxi driver asked, eyeing Jack's rented tuxedo skeptically. "I'm beginning to wonder that myself," Jack muttered, paying the fare. Inside, the mansion had been transformed into a fairy tale setting. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over arrangements of white roses and orchids. A string quartet played softly in the corner of the grand ballroom where guests mingled, champagne flutes in hand. Jack accepted a glass from a passing waiter, using it more as a prop than a drink as he scanned the room for a familiar face. He recognized no one. What had he been thinking, coming here? "Jack Mitchell? Is that really you?" He turned to find a petite woman in her 60s, elegant in a lavender dress, her silver hair swept into a chignon. "Mrs. Bellamy," he said, recognizing Eliza's mother immediately. "It's good to see you again." "Oh, call me Margaret, please. I'm so glad you could come. Eliza will be thrilled." Her eyes twinkled with something Jack couldn't quite identify. "She talks about that summer at Camp Pinewood more than you'd imagine." Before Jack could respond, a bell chimed, signaling guests to take their seats for the ceremony. Margaret squeezed his arm. "We've saved you a special seat. Follow me." To Jack's surprise and discomfort, she led him to the front row on the bride's side, right next to what must be immediate family. He tried to protest, but Margaret was surprisingly firm. "This is exactly where Eliza wants you," she insisted, before hurrying away to attend to other matters. The music changed, and the wedding party began their procession. Jack shifted uncomfortably in his seat as bridesmaids in pale blue gowns floated down the aisle, followed by groomsmen in tuxedos that made Jack's rental look like a Halloween costume. And then the bridal march began. The guests rose to their feet, and Jack turned with everyone else to see Eliza Bellamy standing at the entrance, a vision in white. 8 years had only enhanced her beauty. Her dark hair was swept up elegantly, a few tendrils framing her face. Her dress was surprisingly simple for someone of her wealth, classic and elegant rather than ostentatious. But it was her expression that caught Jack's attention. She looked uncertain. As Eliza began her walk down the aisle on her father's arm, her eyes scanned the crowd. When her gaze landed on Jack, she faltered mid-step. Their eyes locked, and something passed between them, a recognition, a memory, perhaps something more. Eliza resumed walking, but her eyes never left Jack's. When she reached the altar where her fiancé waited, a tall, distinguished-looking man with perfectly coiffed hair and a confident smile, she stopped. The officiant began to speak, but Eliza raised her hand, silencing him. The room grew still. 500 guests held their breath. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice clear and steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I can't do this." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Richard, her fiancé, reached for her hand, confusion etched across his features. "Eliza, what are you saying?" She turned to him, genuine regret in her eyes. "You're a wonderful man, Richard. But I'm not in love with you. I think I've always known that, but I was too afraid to admit it." She handed her bouquet to her maid of honor, then turned to face the stunned guests. "I apologize to everyone who traveled to be here today. But I can't start a marriage based on convenience and expectation rather than love." Her eyes found Jack again, and to his shock, she walked directly to him, extending her hand. "Jack Mitchell. The man who taught me what real connection feels like, and who I've measured everyone against for 8 years. Jack stood frozen, aware of hundreds of eyes on him, of whispers spreading through the crowd, of Richard's thunderstruck expression. "Eliza," he managed, his voice barely audible. "What are you doing?" She smiled then, the same smile he remembered from campfire nights under the stars. "Following my heart." Finally. She turned to address the bewildered guests again. "I know this is unconventional. But if you'll all bear with me, I think we can still have a wedding today." The next 5 seconds stretched into eternity as Jack stood there, Eliza's hand in his, the world spinning around them. And then, somehow, he was standing at the altar, not as a guest but as the groom, while Eliza looked at him with eyes full of hope and certainty. "Are you sure about this?" he whispered as the officiant, looking thoroughly confused, shuffled his notes. "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. "I've spent 8 years building an empire and forgetting to build a life. When I saw your RSVP, I knew I couldn't go through with marrying Richard. I just didn't have the courage to call it off until I saw you again." "But you don't know me anymore," Jack protested. "I'm a single dad. I work construction. My life is nothing like yours." Eliza's smile widened. "You have a child? Tell me everything." And so, in front of 500 of New York's elite, Jack found himself telling Eliza about Emma, about Sarah, about the life he'd built and lost and rebuilt again. The guests watched in stunned silence as the billionaire bride and the unexpected groom had what appeared to be their first conversation in years, right there at the altar. "Ladies and gentlemen," the officiant finally interrupted, clearing his throat. "I believe we need to reassess the situation." Eliza laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "You're right. This isn't a wedding. Not yet." She turned to the guests. "Please, enjoy the reception. Consider this a very expensive party. Jack and I have some catching up to do." The next few hours passed in a blur. Richard had stormed out, followed by his groomsmen and family. Some guests left in solidarity or discomfort, but surprisingly, many stayed, too intrigued by the unfolding drama to leave. Jack and Eliza retreated to a private terrace overlooking the estate's gardens, where they talked for hours, bridging the 8-year gap between them. He learned that her rise in the business world had come at a personal cost: no real relationships, no time for herself, constant pressure from her board and family. "I dated Richard because he made sense on paper," she admitted. "Same social circle, complementary business interests. My father approved. But there was never any spark." "And you think there's a spark with me?" Jack asked, still unable to believe this wasn't some elaborate dream. "After all this time?" Eliza reached for his hand. "I know there is. I felt it the moment I saw you. The same way I felt it that summer. I was too young and too afraid to follow it then. I'm not anymore." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the terrace, Jack's phone buzzed. A text from Kate: "Emma wants to know if you met any princesses at the party." Jack showed the message to Eliza, who laughed. "I'd love to meet her. Does she really think I'm a princess? You're a billionaire in a wedding dress who lives in a mansion. In 7-year-old logic, that's basically royalty." Eliza's expression grew serious. "Jack, I know this is crazy. I know we have a lot to figure out. But I've spent my whole life making safe, practical choices. For once, I want to choose with my heart." Jack looked at this woman, so familiar yet so new to him, and felt something he hadn't experienced since losing Sarah: possibility. "Emma has school on Monday," he said finally. "And I have a job site to supervise. We can't just run away to your world of galas and board meetings." "Then I'll come to yours," Eliza said simply. "I can work from anywhere. My company has survived worse than me falling in love." The word hung between them: love, too big and too soon, yet somehow right. "We should probably date first," Jack suggested with a smile. "Before we actually get married." Eliza laughed. "Probably wise. Though I do have a rather expensive wedding venue and catering already paid for whenever we're ready." As night fell over the Bellamy estate, guests began to depart, buzzing with the story they would tell for years to come: how billionaire Eliza Bellamy had stopped her own wedding for a man from her past, a single father in a rented tux who had captured her heart years ago at a summer camp. 6 months later, Jack stood in the backyard of his modest home, watching Emma twirl in a new blue dress, practicing her flower girl walk for the 20th time that morning. "Like this, Eliza," she called, carefully dropping rose petals one by one. Eliza, seated on the porch steps in jeans and one of Jack's old flannel shirts, her hair in a simple ponytail, clapped enthusiastically. "Perfect. You're going to be the star of the wedding." The transformation in their lives had been gradual but profound. Eliza had not, as Jack initially feared, tried to sweep them into her world of wealth and privilege. Instead, she had stepped into theirs, finding joy in the simple routines of their life together. She still ran her company, but now worked primarily from a home office she'd set up in Jack's spare room. She attended Emma's school plays and soccer games, helped with homework, and learned to cook family dinners, with varying degrees of success. Jack had initially refused her offers of financial help, proud and protective of the life he'd built. But over time, they'd reached compromises. Emma's education fund was now secure. The mortgage on the house was paid off. Jack continued his construction work, but had accepted Eliza's investment to start his own small company rather than working for someone else. Their wedding would be nothing like the spectacle that had been planned 6 months earlier. Just 50 guests, real friends and family, in the local botanical gardens where Jack and Emma had often gone for picnics after Sarah died. "Penny for your thoughts," Eliza said, coming to stand beside him as Emma continued her practice. "Just thinking about how different my life is from what I expected," Jack replied, slipping his arm around her waist. "A year ago, I was just trying to get through each day, make sure Emma was okay, keep the lights on." "Having regrets?" Eliza asked, a hint of vulnerability in her voice. Jack turned to face her. "Not a single one. You didn't just walk into our lives, Eliza. You became part of them. You never tried to replace Sarah for Emma, or erase our past. You just added to our story." Eliza's eyes shimmered with tears. "You two saved me, you know. I had everything and nothing at the same time. All that success, that money, it was hollow without someone to share it with. Someone who saw me, not my bank account." From across the yard, Emma called out, "Daddy." "Eliza. Watch me do a cartwheel with the flower basket." They turned just in time to see Emma attempt the feat, petals flying everywhere as she tumbled onto the grass, giggling uncontrollably. Jack and Eliza rushed over, helping her up and brushing grass from her hair as all three dissolved into laughter. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Jack and Eliza sat on the porch swing, a simple engagement ring now sparkling on her finger, not the massive diamond Richard had given her, but a modest one that Jack had saved for months to buy. "Do you ever miss it?" Jack asked quietly. "The galas, the private jets, the mansions?" Eliza rested her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I miss the convenience," she admitted. "But I don't miss the emptiness. Besides, we still have access to all those things. We just choose when they add to our happiness rather than letting them define it." Jack nodded, understanding what she meant. They had created a life that took the best of both their worlds, the groundedness and authenticity of his, the opportunities and security of hers. "You know," Eliza said thoughtfully, "that wedding invitation I sent you was my subconscious crying for help. I think I knew even then that I was making a mistake with Richard. So you invited the guy you had a crush on at summer camp to watch you marry another man?" "That's a little twisted," Jack teased. Eliza laughed. "Maybe. Or maybe I was hoping for exactly what happened. That seeing you would give me the courage to follow my heart." Jack kissed her softly. "Well, I'm glad I RSVP'd yes." "Me too," Eliza whispered against his lips. "Best decision we ever made." Jack's relief was palpable. "Thank you for understanding. Most women I've dated either want to rush into a ready-made family or keep Zoe at arm's length indefinitely. Neither works for us. We'll figure it out as we go," Emma said, surprising herself with how right it felt to say, "we." Their goodbye was a simple hug, but Emma felt the promise in it, the potential for something real. Over the next few months, Emma and Jack's relationship developed with careful intention. Their early dates were just the two of them, Dinners after Zoe's bedtime with Jack's neighbor watching her, lunch breaks near Emma's office, even a hiking trip one Saturday when Zoe had a sleepover with a friend. Emma learned that Jack had a dry sense of humor that emerged when he was comfortable, that he could be stubbornly self-sufficient to a fault, and that he carried guilt about not being able to save his wife despite knowing rationally that her cancer had been beyond anyone's control. Jack discovered that Emma worked too hard and too long, that she had a secret talent for making elaborate paper airplanes, a skill she'd perfected during boring college lectures, and that despite her confident exterior, she sometimes doubted whether she'd ever find someone who would truly understand her. 3 months in, Jack asked if Emma would like to join him and Zoe for pizza and a movie night at their home. "Are you sure?" Emma asked. "I don't want to rush things with Zoe. She asks about you all the time," Jack admitted. "I think she's ready, and honestly, so am I. But only if you are." Emma felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. "I'd love to come." Jack and Zoe's home was a modest 3-bedroom house in a family-friendly neighborhood. It was tidy but lived in, with Zoe's artwork proudly displayed on the refrigerator and bookshelves filled with an eclectic mix of engineering texts, children's stories, and mystery novels. Zoe greeted Emma with enthusiasm, immediately dragging her to see her room, which featured a ceiling painted with stars that glowed in the dark. "Dad did that for me when I was scared of the dark," Zoe explained. "He said if I was going to be awake anyway, I might as well have something pretty to look at." Emma's heart melted a little more. "Your dad is pretty special, isn't he?" "The best," Zoe agreed solemnly. "Mom picked a good one. That's what Grandma always says." The evening was comfortable and fun. They made pizza together, with Zoe insisting on creating faces out of the toppings. They watched a Pixar movie that made both Emma and Jack tear up at the end, much to Zoe's amusement. And when Zoe fell asleep on the couch between them, Jack carried her to bed with practiced ease. "She likes you," Jack said when he returned, sitting close to Emma on the couch. "I like her too," Emma replied honestly. "She's amazing, Jack. Smart and funny and kind. Like her mother," Jack said softly. "Sarah would have loved seeing her grow into herself like this." Emma hesitated, then asked the question that had been on her mind. "Do you ever worry that I'm intruding on her memory? For you or for Zoe?" Jack considered this carefully. "I used to think that loving someone new would somehow diminish what Sarah and I had. But I've realized that's not how love works. It's not finite. What Sarah and I shared will always be part of me, part of Zoe. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for something new, something different but equally valuable." He took Emma's hand. "Sarah will always be Zoe's mother. Nothing changes that. But Zoe has so much love to give, and so do I. If we're lucky enough to find someone who wants to be part of our lives, I think Sarah would be happy for us." Emma squeezed his hand, deeply moved by his words. "Thank you for sharing them with me, both of them." That night marked a turning point. Emma began spending more time with Jack and Zoe together, helping with science fair projects, cheering at soccer games, making Sunday pancakes a tradition. She was careful not to overstep, always deferring to Jack on parenting decisions, but she found herself increasingly invested in Zoe's happiness and well-being. There were challenges, of course. The first time Zoe had a meltdown in front of Emma, a full-blown tantrum about not wanting to do her homework, Emma wasn't sure how to react. She watched as Jack handled it with firm kindness, neither giving in nor shaming Zoe for her feelings. Later, Zoe apologized to Emma for being a monster, her small face serious. "You weren't a monster," Emma assured her. "Everyone has big feelings sometimes." "I still do." "You do?" Zoe seemed skeptical. "Absolutely. Just last week I got really frustrated when a client changed their mind about a design I'd worked hard on. I wanted to throw my computer out the window." "Did you?" Zoe asked, eyes wide. "No, but I did eat an entire pint of ice cream and complain to your dad on the phone for an hour." Zoe giggled. Dad's good at listening when you're mad. He really is, Emma agreed, sharing a smile with Jack over Zoe's head. As their first anniversary approached, Emma realized she'd spent more nights at Jack and Zoe's house than at her own apartment in recent months. Her toothbrush had a permanent spot in the bathroom, her favorite tea was always in the kitchen cabinet, and Zoe had cleared a drawer in her room for Emma's stuff when they had sleepovers. They were becoming a family, gradually and naturally. The thought both thrilled and terrified Emma. She'd never imagined herself as a mother figure, yet here she was, helping with homework, kissing scraped knees, and reading bedtime stories. One night, after Zoe was asleep, Jack took Emma's hand and led her to the backyard. He'd strung lights in the old oak tree, and a bottle of champagne waited on the patio table. "What's all this?" Emma asked, though her heart was already racing with anticipation. "1 year ago today, you made a joke about marrying the first man who walked through a door," Jack said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "I'm not sure if the universe was listening, or if it was just incredibly good timing, but I thank whatever forces brought us together every single day." He knelt down, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Emma Matthews, you've brought joy, laughter, and love back into our lives when I thought those things might be lost to us forever. Zoe adores you. I adore you. Would you do us the extraordinary honor of becoming a permanent part of our family? Will you marry me?" Emma's vision blurred with tears as Jack opened the box to reveal a beautiful emerald ring, her birthstone, she realized, not a traditional diamond. "Jack," she whispered, overwhelmed. "Before you answer," he said quickly, "you should know this was Zoe's idea." "Well, not the proposal exactly, but she asked me last month if you could be her forever Emma, instead of just her sometimes Emma. When I asked what she meant, she said she wanted you to live with us always and be part of our family officially." Emma laughed through her tears. "She did?" Jack nodded. "I told her I wanted that too, but that I needed to ask you properly." She helped pick out the ring. "It's perfect," Emma said, touching the emerald gently. "And yes, Jack Pearson. Yes, I will marry you. Both of you." Jack slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood to kiss her deeply. When they broke apart, both breathless, a small voice came from the back door. "Did she say yes, Dad?" They turned to see Zoe in her pajamas, clearly having been eavesdropping instead of sleeping. "Come here, you little spy," Jack called, laughing. Zoe ran to them, and Jack lifted her into his arms. "What do you think, Zoe?" Emma said yes. Zoe beamed, reaching out to touch the ring on Emma's finger. "It's pretty, just like we picked. Does this mean you'll be my stepmom?" "If that's okay with you," Emma said carefully. Zoe considered this with adorable seriousness. "I think Mom would say it's okay. Grandma says Mom would want us to be happy, and you make us happy." "You make me happy too, Zoe," Emma said, her heart full to bursting. "Both of you do." Jack set Zoe down and poured champagne for himself and Emma, and apple juice for Zoe. "A toast," he said, raising his glass. "To family, the ones we're born with, the ones we lose, and the ones we find when we least expect it." "To family," Emma echoed, clinking her glass with theirs. Later that night, as Jack slept beside her and Zoe's nightlight glowed down the hall, Emma thought about the journey that had brought her here. A careless joke at a party, a door opening at just the right moment, and now a future she'd never dared to imagine, not perfect, not without challenges, but filled with a love so genuine it took her breath away. The wedding was small and joyful, held in the botanical garden where Jack and Emma had gone on their 5th date. Zoe served as both flower girl and best daughter, a title she'd created for herself. She wore a dress that matched Emma's bouquet and took her duties very seriously, especially her self-appointed task of making sure everyone signed the guest book. During the ceremony, Jack and Emma exchanged traditional vows, but then Jack knelt down to Zoe's level. "Zoe," he said, his voice thick with emotion, I promise to always be your dad, to love you with all my heart, and to make sure you know every day how special you are. And I promise that adding Emma to our family doesn't change the love I have for you, it only makes our family stronger and more full of love." Emma then knelt beside Jack, taking Zoe's small hands in hers. "Zoe, I promise to care for you, to listen to you, to respect the special bond you have with your dad, and to honor the memory of your mom. I promise to be there for science projects and soccer games, for nightmares and celebrations. I'm not trying to replace your mom, but I hope to be someone you can count on, someone who will love you as her own. We're building a new kind of family together, and I couldn't be happier or more proud to be a part of it." Zoe, usually so talkative, was solemn as she listened. Then she surprised everyone by pulling a folded paper from her dress pocket. "I made promises too," she announced. "Dad helped me write them down so I wouldn't forget." The guests laughed softly as Zoe carefully unfolded her paper. "I promise to pick up my toys most of the time," she read. "I promise to be patient when you and Dad want alone time. I promise to tell you when I'm sad about Mom so you can help me feel better. And I promise to love you even when you make me eat vegetables." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden as Jack and Emma embraced Zoe, the three of them holding each other close, a family forged through loss and chance, strengthened by choice and love. At the reception, Emma's friend Lily raised her glass for a toast. "To Emma and Jack, proof that sometimes the universe listens to our jokes and gives us exactly what we need, even when we don't know we need it. And to Zoe, the luckiest girl in the world to have so much love surrounding her." 2 years later, Emma sat in the hospital, holding her newborn son while Jack and Zoe hovered nearby, both eager for their turn to hold the newest member of their family. "He's so tiny," Zoe whispered, gently touching her brother's hand. "And red." "You were even smaller," Jack told her. "And just as red." "What are we naming him?" Zoe asked. They'd narrowed it down to a few options but wanted to see the baby first before deciding. Emma looked at Jack, who nodded encouragingly. "What do you think about Thomas? After your mom's father?" Zoe's eyes widened. "Really? After Grandpa Tom who died before I was born?" Emma nodded. "Your mom would have wanted her son to have that connection to her family. And Thomas Jack Pearson has a nice ring to it, don't you think?" "Thomas Jack Pearson," Zoe repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Can his nickname be TJ?" "I think that's perfect," Jack said, his voice rough with emotion as he sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Emma, the other around Zoe. As Emma looked at her family, her husband, her stepdaughter, her newborn son, she marveled at how a single moment could change everything. One joke, one door opening, one man walking through it with his daughter's hand in his. "What are you thinking about?" Jack asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Just how lucky we are," Emma said. "How all the pieces of our lives, even the painful ones, led us here, to this moment." "The universe knew what it was doing," Jack said with a smile, echoing Lily's words from years ago. "Maybe it did," Emma agreed, leaning into his embrace as Zoe carefully held her baby brother for the first time. That night, as her new family slept around her, Jack in the chair beside her hospital bed, Zoe curled up on the small couch, and baby Thomas in the bassinet, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them together. Life rarely follows the paths we imagine for ourselves. Sometimes it takes detours through heartbreak and loss. Sometimes it surprises us with joy when we least expect it. And sometimes, just sometimes, a careless joke at a party becomes the beginning of the most beautiful story we could ever hope to live. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you. I hope it reminded you that love often finds us in the most unexpected ways, and that families come in all forms, some we're born into, some we create along the way. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories that celebrate the beautiful unpredictability of life and love. Remember, sometimes the best things happen when we least expect them, perhaps even when we make a joke about marrying the first person who walks through a door.